a NIL conversation. Who should you hire to run your NIL program? NFL talk. We're bringing on a guest to talk with us about the Carolina Panthers quarterback situation, and we got some Major League Baseball conversation as well. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up in me?
Welcome into an all-new edition of the Sports Stove podcast, presented by InTheClutch.com. At In The Clutch, you get officially licensed apparel, Major League Baseball, the Major League Baseball Players Association, NHL, NFL, and great retro t-shirts as well. All that is available to you on InTheClutch.com. Use the code SportsStove. You get 10% off your purchase. Welcome into another live edition of the Sports Stove. We are live on YouTube and Facebook, and the audio will be available early Thursday morning. Joining me, as he normally does, is my dad, Dale Stover. Dad, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. A little wild weather here in Southwest Ohio tonight, but I think everybody's okay. So,
yeah, you said you had a tornado up there, pretty close to where you are, so that's always exciting.
Yeah, oh yeah, you always have sirens going off, and it was the other side of town. So, but it moved quickly, and don't know about people being injured at this point, but there was some damage to a big distribution center. So,
yeah, that's crazy. Hopefully, everybody's safe and sound. But we've got a show for you today, and we're going to be talking lots of sports things in just a few moments. We'll be joined by Brian Scott. He's the host of the Injured List podcast. He's going to come on and talk to us about the Carolina Panthers quarterback situation. Who should be the starting quarterback? I had a poll out this week. We'll bring that up as well here in just a few minutes. But, Dad, let's start today let's go with NCAA to start off our day. Couple of quick thoughts. One is I just was thinking through different things today. Is it time for the independents to be done with? Notre Dame's independent, at least in football. Liberty's independent. There's others that are out there. I think Liberty's actually joining a conference. So it seems like where we are in today's time with the way the championships and the playoffs work out and everything, shouldn't we just be done with independence?
Yes, I mean, I think they're going to be forced to, because again, I think little conferences are even in question at this point. I think we're headed toward more super conferences and probably 2 divisions and all that, at least in football. But it's still good because you want little schools to be viable. We were talking about NCAA baseball. There's some smaller schools in that, and there is some time, but again, they're going to have to definitely be in a conference to make that work. So yeah, I don't think the time for independence. There was a time when Notre Dame, I think felt like they could be independent, and probably financially they made one of the first TV deals ever with NBC back in the day. But now there's money. Probably more money in the conferences. So I would think that would end. Of course, Notre Dame was, flirted with the ACC and in some sports anyhow. So.
Yeah, they have. They play in most of the sports, I think, in the ACC, and they've done it in football when they needed to as well. I just assume that time should be coming soon. But the real college thing I wanted to talk about, Dad, Duke recently hired a former Nike employee. He also worked in the NFL in different ways, but they hired him to run their NIL department there at the university. Now, we know Duke as a whole, the school I think is a good academic school, but in sports, they don't go to class just like North Carolina, Kentucky, or any other major college. But nonetheless, they hire in this former Nike employee to run their NIL stuff, and it got me thinking again, where should we be with NIL stuff? Because it seems like it's in the program's best interest not to have a basketball guy or a football guy, but to have almost a marketing guy running their NIL departments, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we've talked about it. The NIL is definitely taking on a life of itself. And now if that's going to be a department and you're going to hire people to do that. Now, as far as keeping a school out of the recruiting scandal, maybe, this works because they can say, hey, we've got a guy that's going to help you with this. You come here. We're not getting into what you're guaranteed ahead of time, but, we've got a guy that's going to be effective. And of course, in Duke, they would have a product that's already very marketable from there. Because again, like you said, with Duke being a high academic school, these kids probably don't have time to do this on their own. So
how many schools, percentage-wise, how many schools are following the rules with the NIL?
I'm not sure. What was that again? I didn't catch all that.
Percentage-wise, how many schools are following the rules with NIL?
Probably more. The percentage-wise is probably higher because I think you got the top schools that are the ones that are, playing around with it. And you got a conference that's got, 8 schools, 12 schools. Probably the majority of the smaller schools at this point are, making a better effort to stay by the rules and let it benefit the kids. So when you look at percentage, probably more schools than not. But the high-profile schools, the ones that are going to be, playing for national championship, probably a pretty small percentage of those that are doing it right.
All right, let me narrow it down a little bit. SEC, how many schools are following the rules?
Well, one.
One. Vanderbilt's the only one?
That'd be my first thought without thinking through it all the way.
Wow, one. That's pretty good. A Big Ten. How many schools are following the rules?
4.
ACC?
4 or 5.
I was going to say probably more in the ACC. They're a little more academic, some of those schools at the very least. And they're Pac-12 out west. We know USC has a long history of breaking rules. What would you say about Pac-12?
Again, everybody's out west, and there's probably more opportunity out there. So I would think less than half, more than half are breaking rules.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm still surprised by your 1 in the SEC. I was expecting like 5, but then I started thinking through the schools, and I mean, Ole Miss isn't following the rules. Mississippi State's not following the rules. Missouri, they're barely SEC anyhow, but who knows? Maybe Missouri is. I don't know, but
they may be.
But they've hired some goofy guys. Who? Auburn?
Auburn's not. I mean, that.
No. And Bruce Pearl schools cannot follow the rules. We know that for sure. Like I was just thinking though, I mean, you got guys that basketball is well known for hiring dads, uncles, brothers to get big recruits to their schools. And I look at this NIL opportunity kind of the same way, where you can hire somebody, maybe not related, but somebody that has a background in getting people money. And I feel like every school should hire basically a unique hire for their NIL department that's focus is getting the kids money. Because right now you still have a very small number of athletes getting NIL dollars. It's your big-time football players, your big-time basketball players, and then your attractive female athletes. Those are the 3 kinds of players, athletes right now that are getting money through NIL. And so you got to have a guy in place that can help you kind of work that, to its fullest, right? To make the most that you can for your players as well. Speaking of money, the Live Tour continues to grow. Today, Bryson DeChambeau and Patrick Reed both announced that they are going to be leaving the PGA to join the Live Tour. Patrick Reed won the 2018 Masters. Bryson DeChambeau, the 2020 U.S. Open. And DeChambeau is one of those characters that could cause people to tune in as well. I mean, how many more well-known golfers do you think we're going to get here in the next couple of weeks headed over to the Live Tour?
Oh, I think you'll definitely get more, maybe another dozen or so. I don't know. I think DeChambeau and Reed are going to play in a couple weeks or at the end of the month in a tournament there. And I think depending on how this goes this week will have a lot to do with it. I'm sure money is by far one of the big draws, but I think when the players actually see how the tournament is being run, the format, things like that, it'll either be very appealing and they'll say, wow, this is really, a good thing to be involved in, or, maybe it'll be dysfunctional and they'll say, yeah, even with the money, we don't want to be involved in that. But I wouldn't think that's what's going to happen. I would think it'll be unique. You'll get sponsors, people to jump on board with it. And once that happens, the PGA, I think they're going to be too late to the switch here. As far as, stopping anything, then they're just going to have to get competitive. And we'll see about that. So,
is there any chance Tiger Woods ends up in the LIV Tour?
Oh, there's a chance anybody can end up in the LIV Tour. So I don't know. He's not playing in the next major coming up, so he's got some time. I would think, there's a lot of discussions with him. I don't know how tied he would be to the PGA. From there right now, he's not one that can play in every tournament. So, but the LIV would love to have his name. But they're drawing some pretty significant people in, especially with the ones, DeChambeau and people that joined today.
Yeah, I think Tiger is a loyalist to the PGA. He's one of the legends. And I think he's been around some of the legends. And so I think that he's more likely just to stick it out in the PGA and let his legacy be that in the PGA. Because I'm not sure he can go to the LIV Tour and win there either at the moment with the way his health is and everything like that. So I feel like he's probably just going to live out his days with the PGA and kind of just be that the new era, right, of legend. He already is. But the Jack and the Arnold of the modern day era, basically. And so he can kind of be the face of the past, if that makes any sense for the PGA. I would be shocked if Tiger goes, but money is definitely one of those things, and they're offering money up front. I mean, they're giving guys performance bonuses, and they're paying them just for playing, where they don't even have to win to earn good money. I heard today or yesterday that the loser, the last place finisher, gets $120,000. So, yeah. I mean,
where do we sign up for that at?
Right. How do I get my name in the hat? I'm on my way to London tomorrow. Yeah. So they're doling out the cash, but they're definitely going to have to find a way to keep it going and to maintain it. What the future is, I've heard a lot of talk on it, and it makes sense that the future of this tour is the college guys going out and getting the big name college guys to come to them instead of the PGA, and kind of build from the ground up, so to say. Use these veterans to get the name out there, but then bring in these young guns to kind of be the future, I guess, of the LIV Tour. I don't know if that's what their plan is, or if they're really just trying to stick it to the PGA. Maybe they're happy to only go 1 or 2 years and just to stick it to the PGA. I don't know. What is the motive behind starting this tour?
Well, again, Norman is behind it, I think, or one of the engineers in it, and he, players haven't been totally happy, it seems like, with the PGA as far as the way they've done things, some of their guidelines. And like you said, in this day and time, most every professional sport, there's competition. And I think, they saw an opportunity that, hey, we can have a friendlier golf tour, a better, golf tour, more opportunities, and probably financially. So, I think some of them were just upset with the PGA, and who knows, probably behind closed doors, the PGA said, fine, be upset. There's nothing you can do about it. There's nowhere you can go, or at least give that feeling to them. And somebody got involved with the right people and said, well, yeah, well, okay, we will find somewhere else to go.
Good point. Yeah, I'm interested to see kind of where it all shakes out, I guess. what the end game is. Is it to truly compete, or is it just to, I don't know, put a dent in it, prove a point? Maybe we see more professional golf tours start up as a result of this as well. I mean, you'd think Tiger could start one up if he wanted to, but like I said, I think Tiger is pretty well. He's been treated pretty good by the PGA, so I think he probably is pretty happy with them and where they are. So what we're going to do, Dad, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk NFL football. We've got a guest joining us as well. But first, let's take a quick break. We're going to hear a word from In the Clutch, and then we'll be back with more sports right here on the Sports Stove Podcast. InTheClutch.com, the newest sponsors of the Sports Stove Podcast, and we are excited to partner with InTheClutch.com. They have officially licensed apparel and accessories for your favorite sports teams and athletes. Use code SPORTSSTOVE and get 10% off your first purchase. You can find shirts like I Still Own You from Green Bay Packers. Are we talking about practice? All kinds of great shirts in baseball, football, hockey, and basketball. Officially licensed apparel from InTheClutch.com. Again, use the code SPORTSSTOVE to get 10% off your purchase. Welcome back into the Sports Stove Podcast live on YouTube and Facebook. And thank you to all those watching on Belly Up TV, if you're watching this on Belly Up TV Friday morning, and all those listening to the podcast, wherever you're listening. We sure appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to go to InTheClutch.com. Use the code SportsStove. Get 10% off your first purchase. Joining us now is the host of the Injured List podcast, a fellow Belly Up podcaster, the one and only Brian Scott. Brian, how you doing?
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're a little muffled, but yeah, we can hear you. We can make
sound a little better.
That's a little better. Yeah, a little better. Brian, how you doing?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to talk about Carolina Panthers here in just a second. But first, what I want to do is let you give us a little information about your podcast, because it's a unique podcast. I've not seen a whole lot of shows similar to what you do. So explain to the fine folks that are listening what the Injured List podcast is.
All right. Well, if you can hear me okay, and sorry about the camera there. Well, with my background being in medicine, sports medicine in particular, and orthopedic surgery, I bring a little bit of a unique perspective to the world of sports in that I kind of break down, analyze a lot of the injuries across all the major sports, dealing with a lot of the major athletes that we hear about and read about in the press and the media. And I try to break it down in simple, easy to understand terms so that you, the fans out there, have an idea of what's happening with these guys that are injured and gals, and when you can expect them back in action, what you can do for your fantasy rosters when you're trying to plan your roster and you've got 2 or 3 of your stars or starters that are out injured. How long they're going to be out? When do you think they're going back? Are the reports that you're hearing, are those legitimate? Are they realistic? What exactly is the injury? Because I don't understand what they're doing. And so I basically just provide an educational entertainment podcast where I kind of break it down, injury by injury. I also bring on some guests, professionals in the world of sports medicine and orthopedics, and we talk about various topics related to a lot of different athletes and injuries and experiences and professions centered around the world of orthopedics and sports medicine. So actually got an episode coming out on Friday with another professional in the industry. So I won't take up too much of your time with that. I'll tell you about it later. But here I am for you at your service. And I know you want to talk a little bit about Carolina football because that's where I'm currently based. So I'm here to kind of fill you in some Carolina football stuff.
Yeah, so I reached out to the network. We're part of the Belly Up Sports Network, and because me and Dad had talked a little bit about Panthers quarterback situation, and I was like, do we need someone that's either a fan or relatively from the area where they know what's going on around there? Because obviously we're all kind of guessing to some degree. But when you look at this Carolina Panther team, the very first question you ask, as you ask with many teams, is the quarterback. Well, who's going to play quarterback? They got Sam Darnold. They chose to not draft a quarterback last year. Then they bring in Sam Darnold. They play him, which I thought was a good idea originally. I'm on record as being wrong about that. They do draft a quarterback this year, but they wait a while, get Matt Corral. They've got PJ Walker there. They've talked about bringing Cam Newton back that they did towards the end of last season. And then, of course, there's the Baker Mayfield rumors where the Panthers players seem to be pretty clear they don't want him, but that's still floating around there. So what do you know? What have you heard? What do you think about the Carolina's quarterback situation?
Well, let me just preface this by saying that I'm originally from New York, so I am a transplant, and I am a Giants fan. So I actually have a very neutral and very objective point of view on this, which is good, right? That's what you want.
Yes, yes.
The Carolina Panthers organization is in shambles right now. That whole Baker Mayfield rumor mill, I think, has been put to rest with the drafting of Matt Corral. They would have been foolish, I think, to bring Baker over because they would have had to eat a huge contract for a guy that potentially could be your future quarterback, who's already had a few years in the league, but, kind of up and down, where you get a guy like Matt Corral that you can kind of groom into the successors, and you get him at a very discounted rate. I mean, they got him in, round 6, I think, with like the 90-something pick. I mean, That's a pretty bargain deal, if you ask me. And you know what? If it doesn't pan out, then maybe next year you'll get another shot at an even better quarterback class. So I think passing on Baker was probably a smart thing for the Panthers to do. There have been rumors circulating around here that Cam Newton may join the organization again. I know that was recently put in the news because he was on a podcast and was talking about how he regrets some of the decisions he made when he went to New England and when he was here last with Carolina. So I wouldn't be surprised if they might bring him in at some point during the year here, maybe to fill in for an injury or just to kind of get a look at him and see where he's at. But right now it looks like Matt Rule has said that they're going to go with these 3 guys and kind of see how they kind of come along during minicamp and then probably make a decision after that. But I don't think Sam Darnold is going to have a very long leash.
I would hope not. If I was a Panthers fan, I would surely hope not. I think he still has potential, but I mean, how much time do you wait on potential in his case? I actually like PJ Walker. I'm surprised he didn't get more of an opportunity last year when they were struggling and needed somebody. And they went back to Cam. I thought it was the perfect opportunity just to hand the reins over to PJ and see what he could do, especially coming off a successful tenure in the XFL or the whatever league he was in, the AAFL or the whatever it was. But
he might get his chance this year because I don't think Corral is going to be ready. I think it's going to take him a while to understand this NFL system, which it does for a lot of the collegiate guys. And I don't think they're going to be too patient with Darnold this year. So Walker might get a shot at some point.
We put out the poll a couple days ago for who should the Panthers quarterback be in week 1. We gave 4 options: Sam Darnold, Cam Newton, Baker Mayfield, Matt Corral. The voters selected Baker Mayfield, 40% of the vote. 35% of the vote went to Matt Corral, 21% to Sam Darnold, 4% to Cam Newton. I don't know. I like Matt Corral. I think that there's great potential there. He could almost be a Tom Brady story to the sense that he got drafted so late, but he's more well-known than Tom was coming into the league. And I'm not saying he's going to turn into Tom Brady, by the way, for all you Tom Brady lovers out there. But I look at this team. Quarterback's obviously the big part of it, but this team still has a ways to go. Matt Rule, the head coach, they bring in Ben McAdoo. You're a Giants fan. How do you feel about Ben McAdoo being the offensive coordinator?
I don't think we really had much positive things to say when he was back in New York. So I'm not so sure Carolina is going to be as any happier than we were while he was there. But, I think aside from the offensive coaching staff, I think their problems go a little bit deeper than that and more on the field. They've got a stud running back who unfortunately hasn't been able to stay healthy very much the last few years. And I see a bad trend developing with that. And I know they signed Donta Foreman this year, who was a very nice compliment to Derrick Henry over there in Tennessee and filled in admirably while he was injured. But, with a guy like McCaffrey, man, if you can't keep him in there for the entire season, your offense is going to have a hard time getting the ball down the field and making plays happen when you're relying on a guy like Sam Darnold and potentially a rookie in Matt Corral and potentially a guy who really doesn't have a tremendous amount of NFL experience in Walker. So, I think it goes a little bit beyond the offensive coordinator and the offensive system. I think it's really just a matter of having the right personnel and keeping them on the field healthy. Now, I know they made a couple of moves in the offseason to bolster their offensive line and provide some additional protection to the quarterbacks they're going to have back there. But they really haven't upgraded their tight end position with the retirement of Greg Olsen. They haven't really done much there. I think they re-signed one of their players, but didn't really have much of a breakout season to really pad the stats at all in the last couple of years. So they didn't really upgrade there. And again, the whole running back thing, can McCaffrey stay healthy? That's going to be a huge, huge key for the success of this team.
100%. And you look at that team and where they are. They've got some weapons, but like you said, they've got to be healthy and they've got to have a quarterback that makes a play. I brought you on to talk Carolina, but I got to ask you while you're here. Your New York Football Giants, Daniel Jones at quarterback. Daboll said all the right things, giving him the opportunity. I'm actually intrigued to see if Daboll can do something with Daniel Jones, turn him into a legit quarterback. He's got the turnover issues, all that kind of stuff. I don't love his wide receivers in New York, but nonetheless, as a Giants fan, are you optimistic for this season, or are you just waiting for it to get over so you guys can get a new quarterback?
I actually am very optimistic. I mean, if you look at the success that Daniel Jones has had, albeit very little, it's when he has enough time in the pocket to sit in there, look down the field, and make a pass. And when he does that, he's as good as just about anybody else in the league when it comes to a guy with his experience. I'm not comparing him to like Aaron Rodgers, obviously, or Tom Brady, but as far as these younger quarterbacks go, the guy can sling it, and he can get it down the field with a beautiful pass. So bolstering the offensive line was a huge, huge step in the right direction. He's still young enough. He's intelligent enough. He's shown some good poise in the pocket at an early stage in his career. I'm very optimistic. I think if you surround him with the right coaching staff, which I'm hoping Daboll and his crew are, then I think he still has a chance. I mean, I really do. Again, Dave tried to surround him with some additional talent on the wide receiver front. I mean, that's been a big issue as well. Even when he has had the time in the pocket, he's had a lot of drop passes. He's had a lot of guys, not running proper routes. There's been a myriad of issues that have kind of contributed to his lack of success. But I don't think it's all on his shoulders. And so I am very optimistic going forward this year. I do expect them to definitely be better, and I hope that means because Daniel Jones is playing better and not just because these teams can play are not as good.
Yeah. Dad, what do you got for Brian?
I got a question on the injury front since you deal with that. And Vince and I are big Packer fans, and I keep up with all the information I can get off the Packer websites and that. But what do you know, or what do you think about David Bakhtiari? Basically, their take on it is he's an older player. They just want to continue to give him rest. He is not involved in OTAs. He's not directly involved in minicamp this week. Fans are very antsy about it. But they say, of course, he played one game last year, did not play the last game, indicated he probably would have played if they'd won their playoff game. But, and I know, ACLs can be kind of tricky. Do you think it's legitimate that they're just giving him plenty of rest before training camp, or is there still a problem there?
When you're coming off an ACL injury, and I've said this a lot of times on my show when I've talked about this particular injury, is that it can sometimes take you anywhere between 12 to 18 months before you're kind of really back to where you need to be. Now, he's been in the league a long time. He's 30 years old. I don't necessarily worry too much about what I'm hearing as far as him not kind of getting ready and suiting up and being ready for training camp, because I would expect him to do that with a veteran. He's got the lay of the land. He knows the playbook. He knows the system. He knows the routine. This isn't a guy that's, now all of a sudden stepping onto a field and kind of in awe of the bright lights and everything. But, anytime you have a guy who starts getting up around the 30-year age mark, with a knee injury like this, it can significantly kind of alter the rest of the course of his career if the damage that was done was significant enough. And often with ACL injuries, you don't just injure the ligament itself. You often will have some other injuries to the joint of the knee along with it. And that can be anything from another ligament being involved, possibly some of the articular cartilage or some of the other structures in the knee that are really important to help prevent against arthritis. So, I'm not too concerned about it. He is a lineman. He's not a skill position player, so that also does factor in. You got to really look at that as well. These guys are really doing more of the static type things on the line when they're blocking. It's not like a skill position receiver or running back where they're going to have to sprint down the field, change direction sharply on a dime, and be able to, use their agility, because that's where that ligament really plays an important role in those types of movements. A guy like Bakhtiari can wear a brace and, lock in and just kind of hold that position and block and probably do fairly well pretty early on in his recovery. Unlike a guy like OBJ, for example, who, ruptured his ACL in the playoffs, the Super Bowl there, just on a non-contact injury. So it's a lot different when you're looking at skilled players versus offensive linemen who are not considered skilled players as far as the activities they do. So I think this is all part of their plan, probably, like I said, for the reasons already mentioned. I wouldn't be too concerned if I'm a fan, but you do got to look at all the factors involved.
Yeah, I mean, Dad, you being an owner, I'm surprised you didn't have the inside info on that, being a minority owner of the Packers. But Brian, this has been fun. We're going to have you on again down the road. Thank you so much. Tell the people where they can find you on social media, where they can find your show, and anything else you want to plug.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. It's been a great conversation, and I am part of the Belly Up Network, as you can see. So rocking the T-shirt tonight. I've got most of my social media stuff is up and running. I got a Twitter feed at host Brian Scott. You can find me on Instagram, the Injured List Podcast. You can find me on my website, www.theinjuredlist.com. You can find me on Facebook, The Injured List Podcast. I've actually got a new episode, like I mentioned earlier, coming out this Friday at noon, where I interview Rodolfo Martinez. He's a certified athletic trainer. He used to be a staff member at Florida International University down in South Florida, and now actually works with the New Orleans, Louisiana Air National Guard 122nd Fighter Squadron.
Wow.
And that's what he does. He takes care of our armed services, men and women, who are fighter pilots, which is a pretty sweet gig and a pretty cool story to hear. So I've got him on to talk some things about sports injuries and his experiences as an athletic trainer throughout his career, and to kind of pick his brain on some military stuff, which is always kind of cool. So you can listen for that and find that on all of the major podcast hosting platforms. I'm on pretty much all of them. And I look forward to joining you guys again and talking any type of injury, any sport. I cover them all, so I don't discriminate.
Very good, awesome, Brian. Like I said, it's been a blast. Looking forward to the next time. Looking forward to that episode. It sounds awesome, and looking forward to listening to that. So make sure you go out and subscribe to the Injured List Podcast wherever you get your podcasts as well. Brian, again, thank you so much for coming on. We sure appreciate your time.
My pleasure, guys. Have a good night.
All right, you too. All right, that's Brian Scott, host of the Injured List Podcast on Belly Up Sports Podcast Network. That's a really intriguing interview coming up for him. I'm looking forward to that. I did not know about that one, so looking forward to that. Dad, a few more football related topics. The Broncos, they've been for sale for a while. There have been talks that Peyton Manning possibly in on buying them. They ultimately get sold to the Waltons, not the TV Waltons, but the Walmart Waltons. So Walmart, the heir to the Walmart fortune, is the now owner, or will be very soon, the owner of the Denver Broncos. What does that mean for the team, if anything?
I would think it means stability. From what I've read, it sounds like, they've kind of become connected in Colorado, and they seem to know about the history of the Broncos. I don't think there's any interest, in moving them. And, they have the money to provide the stability. And so, I think that sounds like it'll be good. Like I said, you got three members of the family there, all with Walmart, and then the other investor is involved in several things, one of them being Starbucks. So kind of interesting.
And the Walton that buys it, I'm trying to look for his first name, Rob Walton. He married the sister of the Avalanche owner, the guy that owns the Colorado Avalanche. So there's already sports ownership. There's rumors of them kind of developing land to build stadiums / arenas as well, and a lot of things happening there as well. So I'm kind of bummed that Peyton Manning didn't buy him. But they said that the money that this Walton guy has is definitely plenty stable. He's not going bankrupt anytime soon. So I think they said he's worth $40 billion or something like that. But he bought the team for $4.65 billion. That's a pretty hefty price tag for an NFL team.
Yes, I think it's the highest one of any professional sports team from what I understand there. And so, yeah, I mean, the prices for those are only going up. And, there were several people, I guess, in line trying to get this. But, financially and in a lot of ways, they probably picked a pretty stable owner there.
Yep, and you said it about the Starbucks thing as well, all in there. He's also a director of JP Morgan Chase. So, yeah, there's a lot of money in this group that is going. I made an offer for $465, but they passed on that, sadly. Let's see here. Deshaun Watson. I don't know what we can say about Deshaun Watson. Let's just keep it on the football side of things. Does Deshaun Watson ever play a snap for Cleveland?
The more information that comes out, I think there's a good chance he will not. I definitely think he will be out probably for this year. Now, depending on how the legal process works, but I think until he is cleared, if he is cleared, I think the NFL is going to steer pretty clear of this. And, everybody may have known this was coming a little bit, with the way he signed the contract for a small amount for the first year. So if he forfeits the first year, he's not losing a lot. I would assume Cleveland has things in place to where he has to play at some point before they pay him. But yeah, right now with the information we keep hearing coming out, the NFL is going to stay away from this. They're going to have to stay away from this. They probably should, unless, things can be, cleared up, definitely legally. And I don't think that's going to happen quickly.
Yeah, the Browns do have an out in the contract where they can get out of this completely. They don't have to pay them a penny, but they don't get their first-round picks back. So they would be just giving away first-round picks for nothing. You've got to believe they're still hopeful Watson is able to play. Man, it's just getting uglier and uglier. Now, legally speaking, he's not going to face any prison time, but he's still going to have issues. And, at some point, you almost think he's just got to have to come out and settle these situations so that it's over with. I don't know what the NFL is going to do. Originally, I said 4 to 6 games. Now I'm thinking anywhere from 10 to a whole season. Man, it's just not looking good. Not looking good for the Browns. And they don't have a quarterback. I mean, they do. But, I mean, you got to think they had to know something could happen when they signed him. They still have Baker Mayfield, but I don't think they can get Baker Mayfield to play for him. He's not showing up to camp. They mutually agreed it wasn't good. But they don't have they got Jacoby Brissett. But, I mean, this is crazy. Cleveland, what's their backup plan? Is it Jacoby Brissett? Or do you think now they try to work really, really hard to work things out with Baker Mayfield?
Well, their problem is the Deshaun Watson thing is not being settled quickly. So, if the NFL will come out and suspend him for the year or whatever, then all of a sudden, they can look more at another answer as far as somebody, more reputable. I don't know that they can patch things up with Baker Mayfield at this point, unless the Deshaun Watson thing was just totally done and wouldn't even come back in another year. But I don't know. Yeah, that one's been damaged pretty well. But the thing that keeps hurting the Browns is, just not knowing what their situation is going to be. And that's going to get more and more perilous as we get close to training camp.
Very true. Our last episode, we talked about Aaron Donald making all kinds of money. The Rams follow that up and sign Cooper Kupp to an extension, 5 years, $110 million. So they have their core guys locked in for a long time. And the Rams continue to spend all kinds of money. I don't know where they're getting it from. I don't know how they make it work with the cap, but they do, and continue to sign guys. Anything else NFL-wise we need to talk about?
No, not right now. I don't think. Of course, training camp OTAs will wrap up here, and then everybody will have a break for a few weeks, 5 weeks or so. So, but I'm sure more things can continue to happen there. But right now, I don't think so.
How many guys get arrested after OTAs end?
Hopefully nobody on the Packers, but we will see. So, like you said, you would think, well, I'm sure the teams do take a lot of time and effort trying to stress that, but there's always things that come up. So we will see.
Here's a Packer topic for you. Aaron Rodgers said he thinks that Allen Lazard can be the number one wide receiver. Me and you and I, however you want to say it, we like Allen Lazard. I think Packer fans like Allen Lazard. The average NFL fan is not going to look at Allen Lazard and think he even has anywhere close to the talent to be a wide receiver one. I think he is a wide receiver two, but he could be forced to be the wide receiver one this year for Green Bay. Do you think Lazard has the ability to be and develop to a maybe not Devontae Adams level, but a number one wide receiver level?
Yes, because the Packers will define kind of what the number one receiver position is. It won't be just like Devontae Adams was. Rodgers said this week that 80% of the offense was tailored around Devontae Adams. That's not the way it will be with Lazard or anyone there. But I think Lazard has the best chemistry and trust with Rodgers outside of Randall Cobb, and Randall Cobb is not played a spot to be the number one receiver there. And if Rodgers says, hey, this is the guy I think and I want to be the number one receiver, I mean, he's the guy throwing the ball and he's the guy checking things off. So I think there's good reason. I think they will obviously spread it around more. I think you're going to see wide receivers catch the ball even more. And it looks like some of the other guys, they like Sammy Watkins. We'll see how he does. Interesting. I heard his comments today. His concern is staying healthy because he hasn't been able to do that. Amari Rodgers, everybody's pleased with how he's come into camp in better shape. So they're going to spread it around more, going to use tight ends, going to run the ball more. I heard Mercedes Lewis said we're going to run the ball more, and I love that. So, it'll be interesting. But if Rodgers says this guy's going to be my main guy, he's the guy throwing it.
Yeah, and I think he's got the talent. I'd put him in the Allen Robinson category. Allen Robinson has been a number one receiver in the NFL. I'd take Allen Lazard over most of the New York Giants wide receivers. So he's got that potential. Let's close out with some Major League Baseball talk. Your San Francisco Giants, one of their top prospects last year came up, Joey Bart, to play catcher, kind of be the big Buster Posey replacement, or he came up, I guess, in 2020. He hasn't turned out to be Buster Posey and actually gets sent down to the minors. They make a trade for a backup catcher, prospect catcher as well. Joey Bart, is he ever going to be a Major League Baseball catcher?
Oh, I think he can be. He just, he wasn't ready at this point of his career, obviously. He's young enough. I think he's got a chance to bounce back. But it's hard to replace Buster Posey anyhow, and they definitely don't have the replacement at this point.
All-Star is coming up, the All-Star game in baseball. We're in June, so that's coming up rather quickly. How do you feel about the rule that every team has a representative in the All-Star game?
I think it's good as far as the fans are concerned and as far as creating interest in the All-Star game. I think with fans having the amount of voting power that they do, then yes, I think you don't need a team getting shut out. And, should you be a major league team if you don't have at least one player that's good enough to be in the All-Star game? I mean, they shouldn't be too much of a stretch to get that.
I guess. I was looking at the kind of through the players and things like that and guys that could be deserving. I think the AL has the better grouping right now. Things could change. Mike Trout injured. We don't know how long he'll be out at the moment. But Salvador Perez has been pretty much the lead catcher. You've got a little bit of a competition at first base. Vlad Guerrero will probably get it. But a guy like Anthony Rizzo's had a great season. Trevor Story, Xander Bogaerts in the middle, in my opinion. Jose Ramirez from Cleveland at third. Aaron Judge and Jordan Alvarez from Houston are outfielders that should make it. JD Martinez should make it as well. Looking in the NL, though, Dad, it's a little bit less star-studded. Just looking at leaders in categories, catcher, you've got your JT Realmuto, you've got Will Smith as well. I've got Tyler Stevenson, a Cincinnati Red of all people, as my starting catcher for the All-Star game. Paul Goldschmidt, I think, runaway first baseman. But then you got second base is kind of wide open. Brendan Rodgers from Colorado has decent stats. Shortstop, Trey Turner. Third base, Manny Machado. Outfield, you got Mookie Betts, but then you're looking at like Sterling Marte, Jurickson Profar. Like, these aren't stud names there as well. DH is a question mark as well. Maybe I got Pete Alonso there. And even pitchers for the National League, guys like Tyler Anderson, Max Fried are the kind of guys you're looking at. So I don't know. It's interesting to see how it's shaking out right now. The AL seems to be more star-studded, whereas the NL is a little bit more of a question mark. And maybe you got some guys in there that could start that you haven't heard of very often, at least in the much. Are you liking? Last year we said Major League Baseball had their best season in a very, very long time. Are you liking what you're seeing in Major League Baseball so far this season?
I think there has been some definite good points to it. Like we've talked about, there are some teams that are disappointing, and there are some teams that are not good. But there's been good baseball. There's some divisions that are very good. There are several very good teams, not just two. Like it always looks like at the start of the season. So I think depending on how it shakes out after the All-Star break, I think it could still be a very good baseball season.
Yeah, it could. Managers getting fired. We talked about that in the last episode. Go back and listen to that with Dan D'Amico. So maybe that changes some things as well. Be interesting to see where it all shakes out. Anything else you want to add to the program tonight before we sign off?
No, I think we're good, tonight, and appreciate everybody checking in with us and listening to us. And going to be a lot more good things coming up here in the near future.
Big stuff coming up, especially for our local hour episodes, but having other stuff going on, hopefully some big guests and things as well here in the very near future. So looking forward to all those things, like you said, for sure. I want to thank Brian Scott from the Injured List podcast jumping on and chatting with us. Sorry about the microphone issues there, but looking forward to his episode coming out and looking forward to having him back on the program. Sure appreciate his time today. Dad, thanks for being back on. Don't forget about intheclutch.com. Use code SportsStove, 10% off your purchase. And Elementor, if you're looking to create a website, or if you don't like your current website, you need to use Elementor. You can create, manage, they host, all of those sorts of things, drag and drop placement as well. No coding involved. And there is an exclusive Sports Stove link available in the YouTube episode notes, as well as in the podcast notes wherever you're listening on your podcast. So click that link so they know we sent you, and they can help you with your needs for your website as well. All right. This episode is our last of the week. We'll be back on Sunday night to record another live episode, Sunday afternoon, I guess, here for next week. And then it'll be available for audio form Monday, wherever you get your podcasts as well. So keep an eye out on Twitter at Sports Stove. We'll announce the next live airing of this podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's Sports Stove podcast. Until next